afternoon. Today is the 23rd of May and it's a Monday in 2022 and I'm reading out of Life in Spirit. That's Harry Edwards' account of the afterlife. This was published in 1976 and he says here that it's the story of John and Mary, Annie John, Annie Mary, brother and sister, husband and wife. Sweethearts, friends, the story of you and me, but with this difference. John and Mary have died and have entered into their new life in spirit. Harry Edwards was a very well-renowned healer. He wrote this in 1976, and I am now at chapter 18, and it's entitled The Place of Healing. With a guide, John and Mary arrived at the place of healing. It did not cover so large an area as the place of attunement. It did not extend so far away. In other ways, there were some similarities. There were the circular brown stone seats, but larger, the average one accommodating 20 persons or more. The most noted change was the amount of activity going on. There was no noise, but an intenseness of effort and feeling. The seats were occupied by 6 to 10 persons. Judging by their features and dress, they were of different nationalities, and some wore clothes similar to those that they wore on earth. John could distinguish some very dark-skinned folk, Arab, Red Indian, and certain Oriental types. Standing around each circle were a number of other persons, appearing to be intently listening in. A short distance away was a simple but beautiful building, spacious from outside observation, but not as large as some of the colleges. It was built of the same blue substance, which seemed to be a common color for those engaged on more advanced spiritual activities. The guide said, "It is indeed a most beautiful, wonderful place, as you will see when I take you there. But first of all, I would like you to come to the central place of the healing, where I hope you will be able to meet the leader." They moved along to where a number of people were standing, hiding from view a larger veranda on which was seated a dominant central figure, and a number of other persons of both sexes, two of whom they recognized as Blue Mantle and Ruth. The leader was a tall person of leonine appearance, a high forehead and black hair. Just as John and Mary were looking at him, it appeared as if the leader knew they were there and glanced at them for a moment with a sign of recognition. The moment was enough to impress them deeply with a sense of utter compassion and tenderness, and at the same time with a power of intellect so penetrating they could not find fitting words to describe it. The guide told his charges that this was the group which was able to receive and sustain communication with their healer instruments on earth more perfectly than any other. Receiving and transmitting was as natural as holding a conversation. The leader had trained a group of assistants, and they, too, could establish a direct thought line with their earthly helpers. A perfect two-way communication. In addition to the leader's assistants, there were other beings trained with the special vocation of tracing thought terminals on earth from sick people or their friends asking for healing. While the period in earth time necessary to receive a thought formation or to transmit one for the healer to receive intuitively was momentary, no spirit mind could receive more than one message at a time. Further, because the emission of a thought force could not be held back, it was necessary for the leader to have his helpers to assist in receiving communication and who were qualified to take any necessary action. The guide continued, "When the healer is receiving contact or personal treatment to a sufferer by the laying on of hands, he is in a condition of attunement with the spirit guide or doctor, and of course with the patient. Thus, the communication is established. When an application is made to the healer for absent healing, a positive thought terminal is established by the request. The healer receives the request, and by virtue of his ability to communicate with the spirit doctor, the line of communication is established from the patient to the healer, and from the healer to the spirit doctor. It is then the task of the spirit people to trace the original thought terminal, to permit the spirit doctor to have direct communication with the patient. One can speculate about the means by which this is accomplished, but we have the undeniable truth that the spirit doctors are able to establish communication with comparative ease. If this were not so, then there would not be any healing by this method. The mass of corroborative evidence to prove the reality of absent healing is colossal, and it could only be a very foolish mind that would deny that which is demonstrable fact. It has to be accepted that the spirit people are able to find the patient terminal no matter in which part of the planet it is situated. In a previous chapter, the story is told how a thought message can be converted into different energy formations, sent out to a man-made satellite and bounced back to a receiving station in, say, Cornwall or some distant continent, and there converted back into letters of the alphabet. If man can do this, how can anyone in reason deny the superior wisdom in spirit science, the ability to complete the triangle of communication? Let us endeavor to trace the operation of the changes which have to be made for the overcoming of a disability. In judging the effectiveness of healing, it is essential to study cases of incurability, that is, when earthly medical science can do no more to remove the cause and the symptoms of the disease. Otherwise, it would be rightly claimed that nature had overcome the trouble without the need for spirit healing. As a rule, less serious troubles are quickly overcome. Every healing has a purpose, and the treatment must be a planned act. To carry out a planned treatment requires intelligent direction. With a successful healing of a medically incurable disease, the intelligence must possess greater wisdom and skill than the earthly doctors. If this intelligence is not human, it can only be of spirit. Before correct treatment can begin, there must first of all be an efficient diagnosis. To observe the case of the disease, the cause of the disease, the adverse changes it had brought about, and where the danger lies. Space prevents a general survey of disease, but let consideration be given to two: leukemia and osteoarthritis. When a healing of leukemia takes place, we have to give full credit to the operating intelligence. It has to be aware of the varying complications and the different symptoms associated with the imbalance of the blood content. The spirit doctor observes any such irregularities and proceeds to use his knowledge to correct any imperfect leukocyte cells, to stimulate the growth of hemoglobin, platelets, or other imperfections in the blood count. In healing, it is invariably found that, dated by the commencement of spirit healing, the number of the red cells rises to a normality and remains so. It is good to note, the guide observed, the process which medical science is making in successfully treating some forms of leukemia, and if only doctors would liaise with spirit healers, there is no doubt still greater progress would be seen. Spirit healing recoveries are said to be nothing more than a period of remission, even though the patients are fully well for years, beyond the 2 years to live the doctors had given patients. Doctors should cease to be dismissal Jeremiahs, prepared to tell the patient and the relatives all the things which might go wrong. All the possibilities of developments which might happen, building up a foreboding picture, destroying all hope in the minds of the patient and relatives. It is little more than ordering the coffin. The conduct is destructive. It prepares the patient to die, and with all the sadness, grief, and unhappiness. The way of spirit healing is just the opposite, for while it does not give any promise of a cure, the treatment proceeds as if the patient is going to live, and every effort is made to overcome the cause and symptoms of the disease. A simple and positive explanation is that of how arthritis is overcome. The principle of the treatment is probably the same for the healing of any of the other different types of arthritis and kindred complaints like rheumatism and fibrositis. etc. The effect of arthritis is the lodging of particles of matter in the joints and tissue, and it is therefore a purely physical disease. As it gains its hold, the patient finds its joints are becoming less free, and the sufferer's continual pain in the affected joints has continuous pain in the affected joints, muscles, and tissues. Because it is a physical disease, it has to be dealt with by physical means, for a chemical change has to take place to remove the offending substances comprising the foreign matter. The spirit doctor will make his own diagnosis, observing where the arthritis is situated and the nature of its atomic molecular formation. The way of instituting any chemical change in the substance of matter is to apply to it directively another form of molecular energy or force which will change the structure of the arthritis molecule, calcium carbonate, CaCO2, i.e. 1 atom of calcium, 1 of carbon, and 3 of atoms of oxygen. We have now arrived at the situation where the spirit doctor has established communication with the patient, has his diagnosis, which is a formation of calcium carbonate molecules in the shoulders, wrists, finger joints, and ligaments, or any other part of the body. The spirit doctor will then go into the laboratory, which John and Mary are about to visit, and then by means of his knowledge bring together other elemental atomic energies to form an energy combination which, when brought into association with the calcium carbonate molecules, changes their state of being, so enabling to become dispersible. An alternative may be by direction of a force, such as heat, to the offending substance. The heat force used may not be a clinical heat, but a force possessing the character of dissolving some of the elemental atoms within the unwanted matter, thus changing the structure of the calcium carbonate molecules, enabling them to be broken up and dispersed. It should be remembered, said the guide, that the correcting energies come from the spirit dimension and will need to be transformed into their physical counterparts as they come into contact with the arthritic substance. This transformation often takes place through the human healer's affinity with spirit and his patient, or through the patient's spirit body in case of absent healing. The healing energies are formed to effect changes in the arthritic substances to which they are directly applied and not to any other tissue or body structure. In other words, they are brought together in the correct refinement, strength, and power to change the formation of the arthritic substances and nothing else. The guide then said, I have spoken long enough. Let us go into the laboratory so that you can see some of the processes I have been speaking to you about, which are taking place. As they approached the blue building, it seemed as if the atmosphere was charged with vibrancy. Indeed, they stood still for a while for them to become accustomed to it. Feeling attuned, they entered through an open archway into a commodious square room, having corridors leading outwards from it in several directions. Along one of these the guide paused, saying, "This will interest you." They went to a strange-looking room, like a series of walls, the thickness of a span, ascending high to the ceiling, which could not easily be defined. This is a room of memory, or thought banks. Look closely and you will see each wall is a mass of small, round, cylinder-like pieces, resembling tubes. These contain the story, treatment, and reactions to treatment of your invalid people who have been contacted from this healing station. Each one of the laboratory assistants and all the healers associated with this laboratory have direct access to all the information which has been gathered during past and present healing ministries. John interjected and said, "We had computers. Would you call this as a computer?" The guide nodded. "You would call it that. Our own word for it I cannot give to your mind, for as yet it would have no recognition in your thought bank memory computer. All these histories are highly sensitive to thought. A healer can remain in constant thought touch. It will record the pertinent and ignore the unimportant. It has the ability to collate experiences from all the cells on its section and can offer a conclusion based upon them. Furthermore, it is connected to all the rest of the thought banks in this place." All that a healer or scientist needs to do is to project his own thought code for him to be recognized and connected. He can then receive whatever healing knowledge exists from the past for his guidance. This will account for the greater degree of success now being recorded with the spirit healing in human life. And also for the greater case of healing accomplishments than was seen in time past. The next place they went to resembled a futuristic, out-of-this-world science laboratory. Its area seemed endless, and its furnishings were totally different to anything John or Mary had previously conceived. In one section, each scientist had before him quantities of shimmering particles of 100 and more different crystals, shapes and shades. Some scientists were concerned with only a few groups of sparkling life. One only had one colored substance of a vivid life intensity. That, whispered the guide, is the element of oxygen. The scientists, who had only a small number of scintillating groups, appeared to be talking to them to perform movements together, and as they did so, the groups would separate into smaller groups of 2, 3 or 4, etc. Others would be moving in single file until they reached a central point where they would meet. Then the single ones would join a group of 3, which would next join up with a single one, and then in order join with another group. It was clear these movements were disciplined so that each element or collection of elements joined together in a precise order, and once so formed, it stayed in that order, and finally the combined collection would move off to other groups of its own kind, where it would stay. "This is lovely to watch," commented Mary. "But what is it? What is it for?" The guide smiles as he answered. "This is nearer to human methods than anything you have yet seen. It is a method of mass producing a very particularized healing molecule for dealing with a common symptom prevailing in Earth life, like an individual kind of influenza, or say an anesthetic to soothe away pain. These are then ready at hand for the spirit doctor to direct to his human patient the new strengths he needs to assist the scavenging processes to overcome the invading influenza germ or to soothe pain. A more specialized process is adopted when the diagnosis is more intimately personal to the patient, requiring a study of the physical cause and its symptoms. For example, if the weakness is a form of anemia or jaundice, a study in depth may be needed to discover the missing nutrients the body cells need. The metabolism is watched to observe any interference with the conversion of food value into nucleic acid protein, which provides the substance for the chromosomes or for the nutrients the cells need for their sustenance. These nucleic acid molecules, RNA and DNA, are exceedingly complex, not only in the elemental arrangements of the atoms, but in the order of their relationship with each other. This becomes a study of our chemical physicists, who may have to untangle the molecule to find out what nutrients are missing, or to readjust the order of formation. The revised molecules have then to be transported as spirit-formed molecules through to the patient, where, with the cooperation of the bodily intelligence, they replace the incorrect molecular protein and adjust the metabolic pathway to produce the correctly formed RNA and DNA molecules for the patient's future better health. This can be achieved quickly, so much so that the experience will show that a patient near to entry into spirit life, can receive so much healing energy in a short time that he will awaken in the morning with a request for a hearty breakfast. Proceeding to another part of this healing laboratory, they were introduced to a mental scientist who took over the explanations as to how they were helping to restore sanity and happiness to a distressed human mind. When an application was made to a healer to seek help for some person with a distressed mind, the healer's guide would be likely to pass the request on to a spirit mental specialist, who, whenever communication could be established, would very closely study the patient and his mental outlook. The mental scientist told them how wide and varied were the causes of mind upset, from a more simple condition of anxiety to states of obsession, and still more serious those of a human mind being possessed by an earthbound entity. He went on to say that it was with cases of possession and obsession difficulty could be found in establishing communication, for if the patient's consciousness was so deeply occupied with the nature of his trouble, it was not easy to gain entrance into the patient's mind in order to treat it with corrective thought influencing. The majority of mind upsets followed on some feeling of frustration, fear of insecurity, or over-concern about a relative or friend. These psychosomatic resentments and fears so often prove to be the primary cause of physical disease, as it is with cancer. So I stop here because this is a very, very long chapter, The Place of Healing, because I suppose that was his main life and purpose, was healing. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have a very good Monday, and we hope that the sun will come out. Bye.